Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, where we'll chart the course for IT leaders who are working to modernize regulated customer communications and get AI ready so their organizations can scale and grow, maintain compliance, and further enhance customer experience. My name is Will Morgan. I'm the Senior Research Analyst at Aspire CCS, and I'll be your host today on behalf of the webinar sponsor, MHC. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to briefly introduce our speakers and hand it off to them. But before we begin, I'd like to point out that today's webinar is being recorded and participants' mics will, of course, be muted to avoid background noise. Now, after the webinar, MHC will email a link to the recording so that you can rewatch and share it. And finally, today's webinar is a short one, so we're not going to have time at the end to address questions, but if you do have any questions, as we go along, feel free to drop them into the Q&A area on screen, and we'll be sure to follow up with you in the coming days. So without further ado, let me start by introducing Kaspar Roos, who is the founder and CEO of Aspire CCS and a recognized thought leader in the customer communications and digital customer experience industries. Our second speaker is Olga Zakharenkava. She's a B2B SaaS marketing and growth leader and the head of marketing at MHC. And finally, Amanda Beasley is the vice president of advisory services at Aspire CCS, where she works to help clients transform customer communications through technology, design, and data expertise. So now that we're all acquainted, Amanda, let me hand it off to you to kick us off.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. Before we get into the main agenda, and good morning, everybody, I would just like to quickly introduce you to Aspire. So who are we? We're a global analyst organisation who purely focus on customer communication management and its evolution to customer experience management. As we know, consumer expectations are rising, and there's been a proliferation of touch points and through which they want to engage with their brands. We're also seeing the pace of technology change rapidly, not least generative AI, which we'll touch on today. As trusted advisors, we use our research, insight, and analysis to really help enterprises and vendors to transform in this really fast-paced and often very challenging environment. So how do we do this? Well, we work with enterprises to really help them understand where they are on their customer communication management to customer experience management maturity. We can then help them with strategies to really make sure that they accelerate that maturity trajectory. Then help them pick the right partner and vendor to help execute against that strategy. We then work with technology vendors and service providers to really help them shape their services and capabilities to meet those evolving needs of the enterprises and of their consumers. We also work with investors and M&A providers who really tap into our deep knowledge in this space to help them make the right choices in terms of, their investments. As I mentioned, we're a global organisation. We have a team in Europe and one in North America, and it's from these locations that we service our clients across the globe. Two key cornerstones of Aspire. One is the Aspire leaderboard, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. As you can see, MHC are in the leading quadrant for their hosted SaaS services. And I'd really encourage you to visit the leaderboard and have a look at our independent analysis of their capabilities. Kaspar's done a great video which really summarises their services and gives, as I say, that independent perspective. The other cornerstone is Aspire Intelligence, something we've launched this year, starting with market trend reports, which really are for executives in the CCM, CXM space, really strategic playbooks to help them really effectively address key challenges in this space. As you can see, we've done one here on content migration, which really aligns with MHC's capabilities and really is the focus and aligned to the agenda of today's webinar. So With that, I'll pass over to Kaspar to cover the main agenda. Over to you, Kaspar.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks so much, and thanks MHC for inviting us to present here. So the topic for today is to talk about why you should modernize your legacy communications and why that's so important going forward, because the world is rapidly changing. Amanda was talking about AI. There's a lot of changes in the market, and we'll touch on some of that as well. So I wanted to start with a data point from our latest 2025 research, and this is where your peers are placing their strategic bets when it comes to customer communications management. So we asked the question, what are your top CCM investment priorities for the next couple of years? And what you can see here is that the top one is improving your communication strategy. And what is very interesting when you look at communication strategy, it's all about sort of enabling business users to be more in control and to sort of provide the right sort of communication experience to the end customer. And what we're starting to see is as organizations are shifting to modern cloud native software that empowers these business users, it's very important to also think about how to govern and how to sort of make sure that you put the right sort of security guide rails in place, if you will. So what we see here is these orange sort of bars, they represent drivers that come more from an experience perspective, enabling customers to access communication themselves, to empower business users to create and manage communications themselves. So it's all about driving business growth, if you will. And then the next three sort of top priorities, they actually talk more about the automation and the efficiency gains and the sort of productivity gains that organizations are looking for. So reducing from print to digital, reducing cost, being more sort of efficient by modernizing software solutions, and then be ready to incorporate AI for content intelligence, for process automation, for all kind of new sort of application areas that we're starting to see more and more. So I'm pretty sure that this AI piece will actually rise when we sort of do the survey again next year. But it's already, we see a lot of impact from a sort of AI perspective. So if you think about the case for legacy migration, so we've sort of seen these sort of key drivers. It's the shift to customer experience. It's the ability to drive cost out of the process. But actually, there are more factors that are really important here. So first of all, security is becoming such a key sort of aspect. We have all seen sort of, data breaches that happen so regularly, being exposed to cybercrime. It's a major risk for enterprises, for service providers. So the more you run outdated technology, the more you are at risk. And you would not be, I see so often when I engage with enterprises, software solutions that run on completely outdated sort of technology. Recently I had a client that still runs sort of, Windows 10 servers. It's just a lot of old stuff that sort of sits there. So it's really important that you sort of think about your security exposure as well. So that's one key aspect. The second aspect is new regulations that are sort of coming, and also existing regulations that you may actually not already sort of be compliant with. There's a really interesting data point that Reuters, or Reuters Thompson, I think that's the name, or Thomson Reuters, sorry, they did the sort of legal experts, but they sort of published. And they said that 10 years ago, banks had to deal with 20 new regulatory changes a day. And actually this year, in 25, they basically said it's more than 200 changes a day. So in the course of 10 years, the number has really sort of risen quite dramatically. An organization nowadays, they really need to make sure they comply with like accessibility, with state-specific legislation in the US, with GDPR in Europe. There's all kind of legislation really affecting this market space. And then lastly, corporate mandates are moving communications management to the cloud. So many of the enterprises that we work with, but also in the research, we see that many organizations are on that sort of cloud-first strategy, and actually forcing customers to move their on-prem solutions to the cloud because of these reasons, because of security, but also to get more cost insights, to have better control, to have more scalability, all kind of reasons why organizations basically are saying that they have to sort of do that. So there are these sort of factors that we sort of seen, right? So investments in CX, investment in cost automation, security, legislation, other sort of, IT sort of, areas. But then also when we look at it from a sort of pure CCM communication perspective, there are some other reasons as well. I mean, too many communications still today are locked in these outdated templates or formats. We estimate about 20 to 25% of enterprise volume still is generated by these sort of mainframe, old legacy systems. These are documents that were developed from a print mindset, page-based media. They're not really ready for real-time bidirectional communications. So anytime there's new formats coming out, like RCS now, the successor of SMS, with RCS, you can have more bidirectional engagement. It's almost impossible to take these communications and really sort of change them unless you've got modern technology in there. Because that's the other key challenge. It's very, very hard to sort of take these old communications and make them true omni-channel. And then also it's hard for organizations to maintain these communications, to make changes, to update logos, to change the branding, whatever stuff is in there. It's really, really hard to sort of do that and costly. And then lastly, employees aren't really trained in that, and they don't really want to be trained in these old sort of, COBOL programming languages or whatever it's out there. So there's really a lot of sort of reasons why you want to take on this challenge and to migrate away from these sort of old systems. Now, what I find always fascinating is how siloed organizations are and how many legacy systems they still have in use. So the average that we found, we group sort of, enterprises in 3 different sort of maturity levels. CCM 1.0 is the more traditional type of sort of organization. 2.0, a little bit more evolved, more digital first, and then CXM is sort of the more digitally advanced organizations. But still, these organizations on average work with 3.5, I mean, that's the average, legacy systems. So many of these organizations got multiple legacy systems. The worst I've encountered was a life insurance company in the US who used 27 different systems, all kind of stuff there. And they basically were in this business. They acquired all these different sort of companies. Really, really painful to sort of migrate off these systems. But that's another key thing. I mean, nowadays with AI, we'll talk about that later, it's becoming easier than 10 years ago. So on average, most customer-focused organizations are 20% less likely to rely on legacy systems to produce outbound comms. So you see that in the statistic. And then also top 5 most pressing business challenges. And I think we talked a little bit about this as well. Very expensive to maintain, costly to make changes, take a long time, security concerns, modern channel concerns. There's no scaling from, if you compare it to sort of cloud solutions. So there are a lot of reasons to really sort of, move away from that. And then also there's real interesting sort of data points. And we can always sort of say that, I mean, when you sort of go through these things, there's a lot of data and proof points out there that show that when you sort of move away from these expensive legacy systems, that there are real tangible business benefits. And a lot of them can be found in cost savings. But actually, when we did our research on this particular topic, we found that actually improved customer satisfaction was actually the top one. And this is very interesting because when I engage with IT leaders when it comes to migration, we often talk about the cost savings and sort of, the time scales and the risk to the business and all these sort of factors. But when I talk to the business, they really are interested in providing a better sort of experience and to have that more omni-channel sort of opportunity and to talk to the customer or engage with them in channels that the customers are looking for. So it really is actually both that can be achieved when you sort of, go through that migration. And also this doesn't or shouldn't be taking a long time. I mean, sometimes you do see organizations that take a long time, but if you really, if you have the ability to sort of optimize and to do this quicker, on average, we see that benefits can be obtained after 7 months. Again, some take a little bit longer because they sort of, don't want to do this in one sort of go. But we also see many organizations that achieve savings really, really quickly. So this shouldn't be, years and years in a sense. So now having sort of laid a foundation here, let's zoom in and double click a little bit on what is your ideal end state here. So let's say you've sort of come to the conclusion, okay, we have to sort of modernize. Then what are some of the things that we're seeing out there? Now, first, let me present you a little bit of an architectural sort of overview. And this is sort of the world that we see, well, I wouldn't say emerging, it's there, but this is the world in which a modern CCM solution would fit. So the right-hand side here, under the content and delivery banner, that's where CCM sits. So CCM in nature is actually essentially you take data from a core system, you marry that with a document template or a communication template. You can have business users that could change the content, the business logic, can do that before the sort of batch communication composition happens, or it can be done, in the moment for a one-off. And then there's the omni-channel output, whether it's sent digitally, whether it's sent to an archive, whether it's sent to a print company, whether it's put on a customer self-service portal, a mobile app. There are different sort of, delivery mechanisms out there. What we increasingly see actually happening nowadays is as these communications are moving to a more digital version, you can incorporate digital capture elements within the omni-channel touchpoint. At Aspire, we call this interaction experience management. And what it does is it allows these mobile devices, because they typically get distributed for mobile, to capture information immediately when end recipients actually consume the communication. And this is useful for onboarding applications, for maybe digital signatures, for e-sign, for contracts, for welcome and enrollment, know your customer, KYC, or anti-money laundering type sort of use cases where you need to collect some information from the customer in order to meet regulatory rules and regulations. So this is the traditional, I would say, CCM sort of market. And what is interesting, as that is moving to cloud, there's a need to integrate with core systems at the enterprise level. So at the top, you would see systems of record, you would see CRM, ERP, core systems in the financial space, in Avalok, or core systems like Guidewire in the insurance space. The ability to integrate with content, the content platforms, digital asset management system, brand-approved communications. Maybe there's a need to integrate with iPaaS solutions or low-code, no-code solutions. Legacy systems, as we talked about, you could still basically extract that content and take out the data and feed it to a composition engine. So what we are starting to see is that CCM is a very important part. It's almost a customer experience delivery layer within this sort of wider enterprise ecosystem of solutions. Therefore, it's extremely important that when you sort of make a choice about a modern CCM solution, you pick a solution that actually built on these principles: cloud native, API connectivity, the ability to actually also orchestrate some of these communications. So if you look on the left side under orchestration, very importantly, it's really crucial nowadays that all these interactions are tracked, that you can actually analyze them. And then you can apply some logic to think about, hey, if this particular customer segment responds better by sending them a text message or sending them a message through a different channel, let's do that first before we actually print something out or before we email this particular customer. So we're starting to see real-time channel optimization based on tracking customer information. And we're seeing journey management as the sort of missing glue, or the glue that links all these pieces together. And Olga will talk about MHC North Star CCM solution, but journey management is a part of that. It's a lot of these capabilities listed here are actually part of the platform, but we'll come to that later. So another key thing, so first of all, choose the right technology. That's absolutely crucial. Fit it into this sort of architecture of the future. And then you're ready for AI and all these other things that are coming. The other part that I do think that's really important as well is to think about your operating model in a way. So you can say technology, you can buy that, of course, then how do you enable your teams? Is this a centralized team across the organization? Is it more distributed within a line of business? Is it federated, where you got a central team that helps and empowers decentralized units by using modern browser-based software. This is actually an area that we see pretty much emerging in many organizations nowadays, particularly as these organizations are going through digital transformation themselves and shifting to these sort of, agile teams where IT and the business, they work hand in hand, and more sort of, integrated product teams, and these tribes and all these names that come up now in pods, and you name them. But federated models are becoming a little bit more popular, but could also be shared service between various lines of business, or even between enterprises themselves. Maybe there's more informal communications, or maybe you rely more on your outsourcer to sort of do that. There are different sort of models that sort of, are out there, but it's really important that when you think about migration, you think about this sort of, operating model. Another part that I really think is important when you shift to cloud is to empower these teams to keep innovating. Really, really important. Because if you think about the traditional IT model and your software runs on-prem, a lot of the IT team is actually, they spend their time on keeping the software up to date, keeping it secure, making sure these new versions are being installed. They do testing. They sort of spend a lot of time making sure the infrastructure is up to date. And the general sort of ballpark that we see out there is 75% spent on maintaining and making sure it's up and running versus 25% time spent on developing new functions. If you now switch to a sort of, cloud version, the idea is that the vendor will do all the sort of maintenance, keeping it up to date, making sure it's all secure, it runs in a sort of, scalable, secure environment. So that time then drops from 75 to 25% and frees your team up to do other innovative things and to help to reduce the backlog, or to sort of look at other ways of driving innovation and value to your organization. So that's, I think, the key sort of benefit that you would get. So a lot of those migrations should really drive a lot of cost savings, and you should be able to build a good sort of business case on sort of, this on this topic. So we do a lot of sort of support. We help enterprises with migration strategy. I'm currently involved with a large insurance company, helping them with a migration strategy from on-prem to cloud, and think about target architecture models and all these sort of areas. And typically it starts with assessment and planning, doing an audit, thinking about the future architecture, the migration strategies. Then we look at, okay, then if you sort of if you move that over to cloud, how do you think about your templates, your content migration strategy? Do you use AI? How do you do that? There's a lot of development in that area to look for content duplicates and to sort of make that easier. Vendors are investing a lot of effort into these areas. And then lastly, implementation. How do you test that? How do you make it sort of, easy to sort of implement? And then there's generally, before I hand it over to Olga, two migration strategy. One is to lift and shift, and you basically take up all the old stuff and port it right into the new solution. My preference would be to actually take some opportunity to rework these communication templates for the digital channels. Sometimes that's not feasible. Sometimes you are on a very strict sort of deadline, and IT is really forcing you to do this in this particular order. Then, of course, lift and shift it to the new infrastructure, and then from there you will update. But this actually has a little bit, I think, benefits when you rework the content structure, when you do think about how to sort of, make it, reduce all the content and then sort of, migrate them. It's an easier way, and you actually can reach better CX outcomes in this particular way. So I know there's quite a bit of content that we went through, but I would love to, hand it over to Olga to talk a little bit about MHC and your solution. So Olga, over to you.
Thank you, Kaspar. It's great content, and I think what will be great as some of the takeaways I'll highlight when talking about MHC is that we are focused on supporting organizations with modernization. Our solution, our platform, was really designed and architectured in a way that helps and doesn't pose additional obstacles, because as we know, every project is an investment of time and effort, undertaking, change management. So from our side as your technology partner, we make sure that on the technology side, we make it as easy as possible for you. You can take a look at some of our accolades on the slide. I don't need to go over them, maybe with an exception of our customer recognition. We are really proud of serving our customers for more than 15 years in some cases. And a testament to that is the reviews that they leave on publicly facing platforms and the way that they trust us with additional projects. We're proud of our integrations. We're proud of the fact that our platforms are very open and conducive to working with the tools that you already have. And let's go next. Now, what do we actually do as a company? Why do we exist? Well, we exist to be able to take your data from any system, from any platform, in any format, and then use it to create documents that can be delivered through any channel. What MHC Customer Communications Management engine handles is everything from extract, transform, load. We have a great ETL tool that is very intuitive, drag and drop. Highly recommend to check it out if you've never seen it, because you will probably not see anything like this from other vendors. So ETL, template design and creation, composition, translations, language versions, workflow orchestration, journey orchestration, delivery through multiple channels, as I mentioned. And obviously, we're investing in AI, and we're doing it in very practical ways. What I would like you to also take away when you listen to this webinar, and please do go to our website or contact us if you'd like to discuss your specific use case. But the takeaway is we have built a platform that is open and flexible. It's API based. We do have a UI as well, of course, but we really designed it for digital transformation. With digital transformation comes the need to involve business users in addition to your technical staff. So when you think about using MHC North Star CCM, think about what your developers are going to do. Think about what the business users, a business analyst will be able to do with this platform, as opposed to relying on IT resources alone. We know what a heavy lift it might be to migrate to a different system or to modernize your CCM stack in general. We rely heavily on IT in the traditional sense when you think about CCM platforms, but with MHC, that is changing, and we're giving more power to the users so that transformation could happen faster and so that you could scale it faster as well. The way that AI comes into play here is that obviously content creation, supporting translations and things like that, content management, but we have a very aggressive AI roadmap. I would like to not talk about it in detail today because some of it is our proprietary information, but if you do contact us as a potential customer, we're happy to tell you about some of the things that will enable very significant cost savings for you as you're thinking about migrating your content, your documents, your templates to another system, or just taking a part of your communications and modernizing them. Another takeaway is with all the capabilities we do have, because we're open, flexible, and configurable, we don't push you to move everything at once. I think Kaspar hinted at the fact that there are different approaches to transformation and migration, and we really support the one that works for you and works for the pace that you can afford in terms of change management and all the other projects that you're running. We can start small and expand from there, and we can also onboard and educate your users to do a lot of the work after the initial implementation so that you don't have to constantly return to MHC for professional services. And some of these takeaways are really here. If we were to choose just several things for you to remember is we empower business users. We have tools for end-to-end CCM workflow from ETL to delivery. We're scalable, flexible, and configurable. Very importantly, you can host us in any environment. Most of our clients are either starting in the cloud in 2025 or migrating to the cloud, but some of our clients will always prefer to be on-premise, and that's fine. And our product supports both, and our roadmap supports both as well. Our professional services are here to get you started, to train your users. But for some of the work, for a lot of the work, once you've been implemented, you'll be able to do it yourself and not rely as heavily on us, and realize some savings that way as well. Really, if you think about the steps that it takes for us to engage with you, if you were to consider MHC, we would look at your data. Again, it can be any data. We would use our low-code, no-code ETL tools to help bring that into the system. We'll talk about your deployment model. We'll talk about what is legacy, what is modern for you. Our expert team, step number 2, with hundreds of implementations under their belt, will support you through the process and train your users and onboard them, IT and non-IT. If you need a partner exploring archiving solutions or enterprise content management or other things, we can definitely connect you through our network. And once we know what the project looks like, our pricing is quite flexible and supports your growth. So that's the last thing we would ever talk to you about. The use case and the benefits come first, and then we do not believe we've ever lost a customer or a prospect in terms of pricing. And that's it. So please contact MHC, mhcautomation.com if you have any questions. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like to. And thank you very much. Hope to hear from you.
Great. Thanks, Olga. Really nice, succinct sort of overview. And I can basically, what you mentioned about ETL, I fully agree. That's a really nice feature from a sort of data mapping perspective. Just want to sort of, second that. So to wrap it up, why is migration important? So what we've seen here is that modernization is the key to sort of future growth. You've got to sort of have modern software. There's so much stuff coming. Olga hinted on sort of, new AI developments, innovations from MHC. There's just one example. I mean, there's potentially additional channels that will come, new data formats. There's all kind of stuff that is sort of changing because of the way we evolve as a society. And if you fail to modernize, you really sort of, lose the ability to build a competitive advantage, particularly if you're in very regulated, sort of commoditized industries. So I think the key questions you need to ask yourself is what factors are driving your communications modernization strategy? We've sort of, went through that in this presentation, but also what is the strategic side of this? So that's another key question that you need to think about as a business, to say, actually, it's all that sort of, stuff combined, that in order to really build a better solution, a better sort of experience for our customers at a lower cost and bringing in more agility, enabling business users to manage these comms, we've got to sort of, address these fundamental issues. So with that, thank you very much for listening to us. And Will, I'm going to hand it over to you to close us out.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to close this out. So, on behalf of myself and my colleagues at Aspire CCS and our partners at MHC, I want to again thank all of you for joining today's webinar. Again, watch out for that email with the recording link. And if you do have any questions, you can engage directly with MHC by using that QR code that you see on the screen, or you can reach out to today's speakers at the contact points provided. So, again, thanks to everybody, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.